Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Young and the Restless channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. The week ahead on The Young and the Restless is already shaping up to be one filled with emotional breakdowns, dangerous choices, unexpected reunions, and relationships pushed to their limits. As the week beginning August 17th approaches, Sharon Newman finds herself riding to the rescue just as Nick Newman appears to be spiraling toward his lowest point yet, making a shocking decision that could leave everyone around him devastated. At the same time, Billy Abbott is falling deeper into the kind of obsessive fixation that has caused trouble for him before, and this time, his relentless pursuit of answers may finally push him over the edge. Meanwhile, Nikki Newman and Victor Newman return from their trip to Italy earlier than expected, bringing their concerns about Nick back to Genoa City with them. Victoria Newman is preparing to explore a surprising new romantic spark, while major changes begin taking shape at Winters, creating another layer of uncertainty for the people at the center of the story. But before we look ahead to everything coming during the week of August 17th through August 21st, the drama still has to unfold through the remainder of this week, and Wednesday, August 12th, begins with Devin Hamilton trying to reassure Abby Newman that their future is finally going to be different. Devin promises Abby that things will be good from now on and that she will never lose him, and there is a new energy surrounding him as he becomes increasingly excited about his plan to create a liberal arts college. For the first time in a while, Devin seems genuinely energized by the possibility of building something meaningful, while Abby is equally happy when she crosses paths with Jack Abbott and Diane Jenkins at Society. She insists on treating them, wanting to hear how things are going, and Jack is able to tell her that his recovery is progressing well. Yet beneath the pleasant conversation, another problem is waiting to surface, because Kane Ashby reveals that he has hired Billy, something Diane already knew but deliberately failed to tell Jack, leaving Jack understandably upset that the information was kept from him. Kane then explains that Billy has become completely fixated on what appears to be a wild goose chase involving Chancellor, and his warning makes it clear that Billy's behavior is already creating problems almost immediately after being hired. Kane admits that if Billy refuses to stop digging, he may have no choice but to fire him, potentially ending Billy's time at Chancellor almost as quickly as it began. Diane immediately recognizes the pattern, believing Billy has become obsessed again, almost as though his need to chase a mystery has become an addiction of its own. The conversation takes another emotional turn when Jack tells Diane that Nick is out of rehab but missing, information he received from Nikki after she asked him to become Nick's sponsor. Diane is visibly unhappy about Jack growing close to Nikki again, but Jack reminds her that Nikki and Victor have reunited and are currently traveling, while Diane remains his best friend and the person he has chosen to stand beside. Diane, however, cannot understand why Nikki would take Victor back, and despite all of the complicated feelings surrounding their family, Jack and Diane can only hope that Nick finds his way back from the dangerous path he has chosen. Elsewhere, Nate Hastings receives a piece of hope that could completely change the direction of his life. Nate tells Lily Winters that he is looking into a new procedure that could potentially restore the use of his hand, giving him the possibility of returning to medicine and becoming a surgeon once again. The thought of leaving Lily at Winters worries him, especially because Devin is also preparing to move on. But Lily refuses to let Nate sacrifice such an important opportunity for her sake. She makes it clear that he should pursue the procedure, even joking that she will fire him herself if that is what it takes to make him go after his dream. Lily believes she can handle Winters on her own, while Kane can continue managing Chancellor for her, and that decision gives Nate the freedom to finally consider reclaiming the career he lost. When Devin later visits Nate, the two men have a chance to confront the painful history between them and the role Devin played in ending Nate's medical career. Devin carries enormous regret because he knows that his actions were essentially the reason Nate had to give up being a surgeon, and that guilt has remained with him. Yet, instead of allowing the past to destroy their relationship, the two men encourage each other and finally put the bitterness behind them. Their embrace becomes a quiet symbol of forgiveness, showing that enough time and honesty can sometimes heal wounds that once seemed impossible to repair. With Lily's support confirmed, Nate decides that he is going to pursue the chance to become a surgeon again, while Lily turns her attention to the future of Winters and explains the changes to Kane. Kane asks whether she wants Chancellor back, clearly willing to make room for her if that is what she wants. But Lily appreciates the offer while making it clear that she wants to run Winters herself and leave Chancellor in Kane's capable hands. Then, the story takes a much darker turn as Nick Newman reaches a frightening new low. Alone with Marie Kirkland, played by Jade Harlow, Nick finds himself in a rundown motel room where both of them are high, and after sleeping together, Nick appears ready to walk away from the entire situation. He writes Marie a note telling her that he hopes she gets the help she needs, seemingly determined to leave the chaos behind him and disappear from the situation. But just as he is preparing to go, Nick realizes something is terribly wrong because Marie is no longer moving. Panic immediately takes over when he understands that she has overdosed, and despite everything that has happened, Nick begins performing CPR in a desperate attempt to save her life. Marie eventually wakes up and begs Nick not to call for help, but Nick makes the difficult decision to ignore her wishes and calls 911 anyway, refusing to let her die simply because she does not want the consequences. When the paramedics arrive, they take Marie away, leaving Nick alone in the motel room with the horrifying reality of what has happened. Once the adrenaline fades, Nick is left lying alone in that miserable room, overwhelmed by shame, disgust, fear, and the realization of just how far he has fallen. He feels terrible about everything, and the weight of the night finally becomes too much for him to carry by himself. In that vulnerable moment, Nick reaches for the one person he believes might still come for him, and he calls Sharon. He admits that he is doing very badly and, in a desperate plea for help, asks Sharon to come and get him. It is a heartbreaking moment because Nick has spent so much time running from his problems, yet now, after reaching what may finally be rock bottom, he is admitting that he cannot escape them alone. Sharon's response could become the turning point Nick desperately needs. By Thursday, August 13th, Billy's obsession is beginning to collide with the people closest to him. Kyle Abbott and Jack hear a secret from Billy, and the revelation could involve the mystery surrounding Jill and everything he has been digging into at Chancellor. There is also the possibility that Billy could reveal information about Newman Media and Adam Newman going behind Victor's back, especially if Jack begins questioning him about what Kane has already told him. Either way, Billy appears increasingly unable to keep his investigation under control, and the more he uncovers, the more dangerous his fixation becomes. Meanwhile, Nikki and Victor are still supposed to be enjoying their time in Italy, but the situation involving their son appears serious enough to force them to abruptly cut the trip short. Their return home is driven by concern for Nick, and with Sharon already on her way to help him, there is finally a possibility that Nick could return to rehab before the week is over. Nick's frightening night with Marie and the overdose may have shaken him badly enough to scare him straight, at least temporarily. Yet there is another question hanging over his recovery, because Sharon may eventually learn exactly what happened inside that motel room. It remains uncertain whether Nick will tell her that he slept with a woman he barely knew while they were both using drugs, or whether he will try to keep that humiliating secret buried. If Marie survives and remains part of the story, the situation could become even more complicated because she is married, even though her marriage is already fractured and she has now cheated on her husband with Nick. What happened between them was not simply another mistake in Nick's downward spiral. It could become a secret that follows him into rehab and threatens to complicate his recovery even further. By Friday, August 14th, Billy's choices are creating even more trouble for Lily and Kane, and once again, Billy seems to be coming directly between them. His fixation on the mystery surrounding Jill and his relentless digging through Chancellor's archives appears to be at the center of the conflict. Kane may finally begin to understand that Lily was right all along and that hiring Billy was a mistake, especially since Lily never wanted Kane to make him the offer in the first place. Now Kane is already dealing with problems caused by Billy almost immediately after bringing him into Chancellor, which explains why he warned Jack that Billy could be fired. But there is a dangerous possibility hiding underneath that decision. If Kane suddenly cuts Billy loose, losing his position could push him even deeper into his obsession and send him completely off the rails. At the same time, Sharon makes her way to the new ranch, where she talks with Nikki and Victoria about what has happened to Nick. Sharon is likely to explain that Nick reached out to her when he realized he could no longer handle his situation alone, and that she answered his call by taking him back toward rehab after his relapse. For Nikki, hearing that her son finally hit rock bottom is both terrifying and strangely hopeful, because it means he may finally be willing to accept the help he has resisted for so long. Yet Nikki continues to hide the depth of her fear behind a brave expression, trying to stay strong while privately worrying herself sick over Nick. Tragically, Nikki still carries an enormous amount of guilt over his addiction because she believes her own struggles and what she calls the addiction gene were passed down to her son, making her feel as though she gave him a bad example and somehow caused his problems. But no matter how much blame Nikki places on herself, Nick's addiction is not her fault, and the emotional burden she carries could become just as painful as Nick's own struggle. Meanwhile, Adam Newman and Chelsea Lawson find themselves looking backward as they rehash the past and confront the complicated history that continues to shape their lives. Their conversation seems likely to circle back to the endless Newman family drama because both Adam and Chelsea are worried about Nick while also questioning where they themselves are headed next. They are both exhausted by Victor's influence and increasingly frustrated by the feeling that their lives are constantly being controlled by his decisions. If Victor returns from Italy and immediately goes after Adam with the same intensity as before, it could become the breaking point for Adam and Chelsea, forcing them to seriously consider whether they can continue living under the shadow of Victor's battles. There is also the question of whether Victor will return still determined to continue his vendetta against Billy, which would inevitably pull Sally Spectra deeper into the conflict. Perhaps, just perhaps, Nick's collapse will finally make Victor realize that his family needs him to stop fighting and change his ways, although there is little reason to expect Victor to abandon his vendetta so easily. As the week of August 17th through August 21st approaches, Marie Kirkland may not disappear from the story just yet. Jade Harlow has been cast in a recurring role, and after appearing for roughly 2 or 3 episodes so far, there is a strong possibility that Marie could continue appearing as Nick attempts to rebuild his life. One particularly explosive possibility is that Marie could turn up at rehab, putting her directly in Sharon's path and potentially leaving Sharon stunned by the discovery of this woman in Nick's life. Marie's complicated marriage only makes the situation more volatile because her relationship with her husband is already fractured and she has now crossed another major line by cheating with Nick. If Sharon discovers just how tangled Nick's relapse became, his recovery could become much more difficult than simply getting sober again. Amid all this darkness, Danny Romalotti is preparing to bring a completely different kind of emotion into the story when he surprises Christine Williams with a new love song. Their connection continues to develop, and viewers can expect to see more of Danny and Christine together at the Shadow Room, creating moments of warmth and romance against the darker drama surrounding them. But the peace will not last everywhere because Billy is continuing to play with fire and make one terrible decision after another. His obsession is becoming so consuming that he is getting dangerously close to losing Sally, and if that happens, he could lose the chance to be there for their baby as well. Billy's behavior has reached a point where he almost resembles Victor in his own way, because both men can become so consumed by their personal missions that they fail to see the damage they are doing to the people they claim to love. While Billy spirals, Lily and Kane continue moving forward with their renewed relationship, trying to build something stronger despite the complications surrounding them. Their happiness could be threatened if Billy's obsession continues interfering with their lives, but for now, they appear determined to keep moving forward together. Adam and Chelsea, meanwhile, are carrying their own heavy concerns as they worry about both Sally and Nick while simultaneously dealing with Victor's relentless pressure. With the Newman family drama becoming increasingly unbearable, Adam and Chelsea may soon make a major decision to step away from the chaos and create a life that is less controlled by Victor's constant battles. Whether they can truly escape his influence is another question entirely, because Victor has never been someone who easily lets his family walk away. And then there is Victoria Newman and Kyle Abbott, whose recent almost kiss has left a very different kind of tension hanging in the air. Their chemistry appears to be growing, and during the week of August 17th through August 21st, that unfinished moment could finally turn into an actual kiss. If Victoria and Kyle cross that line, it could open the door to a romance that nobody saw coming and create another complicated connection within the Abbott and Newman worlds. At the same time, Matt and Phyllis Summers continue getting deeper and deeper involved with each other, despite the fact that practically everyone around them seems to hate the relationship. Phyllis is expected to parade Matt around the shadow room soon, which could create an especially uncomfortable moment when Danny and Christine see them together and react with complete horror. And with more Mariah on the horizon as well, the week ahead promises to keep adding new emotional complications just when it seems like Genoa City could not possibly handle another one. As the tension surrounding Genoa City continues to rise, the week of August 17th through August 21st looks ready to push several characters into situations they can no longer control. Sharon's decision to stand beside Nick could become one of the most emotional developments of the week, especially after seeing how badly his latest relapse has affected him. Nick has finally reached a point where he is admitting that he needs help, but getting back into rehab will only be the beginning of a much harder journey. Sharon may have to deal not only with Nick's addiction, but also with the secrets and consequences surrounding Marie, including the possibility that Marie could reappear while Nick is trying to recover. That means Sharon could find herself confronting painful truths at exactly the moment when Nick is most vulnerable. For Nikki, Nick's collapse is likely to reopen wounds she has never completely healed from. She may continue trying to convince everyone around her that she is strong enough to handle the situation, but underneath that composed exterior is a mother terrified that her son could lose his life. Her guilt over his addiction continues to consume her, especially because she believes her own struggles somehow influenced Nick's choices. Even though the truth is far more complicated and Nick's addiction is not Nikki's fault, that knowledge may not be enough to silence the voice inside her blaming herself. Victor's return from Italy could therefore become extremely important, because instead of simply returning to his usual battles, he may be forced to confront the possibility that his son needs his father more than he needs another enemy to defeat. That could also change the direction of Victor's conflict with Adam and Billy, although nobody should expect Victor to suddenly become peaceful. Adam and Chelsea have already reached the point where they are exhausted by the endless Newman drama, and Nick's crisis may force them to reconsider what kind of future they actually want. They have spent too much time dealing with Victor's demands, grudges, and power struggles, and there may come a moment when they decide that remaining under his control is simply no longer worth the emotional cost. If Victor returns from Italy and immediately attacks Adam again, the pressure could become unbearable. At the same time, if Victor continues targeting Billy and Sally, his vendetta could eventually destroy relationships he claims to be protecting, making Nick's situation even more ironic because the family may need Victor to stop fighting while he remains determined to win. Billy, meanwhile, appears to be heading toward one of his most dangerous emotional spirals. His fixation on Jill's secret and the information buried within Chancellor's archives has become more than simple curiosity, because he is allowing the investigation to consume every part of his life. Kane is already questioning whether hiring Billy was a terrible mistake, while Lily is watching the situation unfold after previously warning Kane not to bring him into Chancellor. If Billy continues pushing forward despite every warning, his obsession could cost him his job, his relationship with Sally, and eventually his chance to be present for their baby. The tragedy is that Billy may genuinely believe he is doing the right thing, but his inability to stop himself could turn that pursuit into another self-destructive chapter in his life. The growing pressure could also create problems between Lily and Kane, even as they attempt to enjoy their renewed relationship. Lily wants to focus on Winters and prove that she can successfully lead the company herself, while Kane has demonstrated that he is willing to support her by continuing to handle Chancellor. Yet Billy's presence keeps creating an uncomfortable shadow over everything they are trying to build. If Kane finally decides that Billy has crossed too many lines and fires him, Billy may not react calmly or rationally. Instead, losing Chancellor could become the final trigger that sends him into an even more reckless search for answers, and everyone around him could pay the price. Away from the business wars, Victoria and Kyle are bringing a completely different kind of suspense into the week. Their almost kiss has already created an undeniable sense of anticipation, and now the possibility of an actual kiss changes everything. Victoria has been growing increasingly flirtatious, while Kyle seems unable to completely ignore the chemistry between them. If they finally give in, the moment could mark the beginning of a relationship neither family is prepared to accept easily. The Newman and Abbott worlds have always been filled with complicated rivalries, so a romance between Victoria and Kyle could create new tension on both sides. What begins as flirtation could quickly become something much more serious, especially if neither of them is prepared for the emotional consequences. Meanwhile, Phyllis and Matt continue moving deeper into their controversial relationship, even though almost everyone around them seems determined to disapprove. Phyllis appears ready to make their connection more public by bringing Matt into the shadow room, essentially putting their relationship directly in front of people who already have strong opinions about it. That could make the atmosphere extremely uncomfortable, particularly when Christine and Danny are around. Their reaction is expected to be anything but supportive, especially considering how complicated the history between these characters already is. As Phyllis continues embracing Matt despite the criticism, she may be proving that she has no intention of allowing other people's disapproval to determine who she chooses to be with. At the shadow room, however, Danny and Christine have their own reason to smile when Danny surprises Christine with a new love song. Their romance offers a softer and more hopeful contrast to the betrayals and conflicts surrounding them, and viewers can expect to see more of the pair together as their relationship continues to develop. These moments could become especially meaningful because they provide a sense of warmth in the middle of so much chaos. But even their happiness may be tested by the people entering their orbit, particularly if Phyllis begins parading Matt around the same space. The shadow room could therefore become a place where romance, jealousy, shock, and emotional confrontation all collide. And just when it seems like the major storylines are already packed with enough drama, more Mariah is expected to arrive. Her return could add another layer to the rapidly changing landscape in Genoa City, particularly as other characters deal with their own personal crises. Meanwhile, Nate's potential return to surgery represents one of the few genuinely hopeful developments on the horizon. His chance to restore his hand and reclaim his medical career could give him a future he once believed was permanently lost, while Devon's willingness to let go of their painful history allows both men to move forward without carrying the same resentment. Lily's support only strengthens that possibility because she is making it clear that Nate should not sacrifice his dream simply because she needs help at Winters. As all of these stories move forward, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The week ahead will be defined by characters standing at crossroads. Nick is standing between recovery and another devastating fall, while Sharon is stepping forward to help him when he finally admits he cannot save himself. Billy is standing between uncovering the truth and destroying everything around him, while Lily and Kane must decide how much disruption they are willing to tolerate. Adam and Chelsea are standing between remaining trapped inside Victor's world and finally breaking away from it, while Victoria and Kyle are standing on the edge of a romantic decision that could reshape their relationships with both the Newman and Abbott families. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Nikki and Victor return home to discover that their family problems are far more serious than anything they left behind in Italy. The most emotional question may ultimately be whether Nick's lowest moment becomes the beginning of his recovery or simply another chapter in a cycle that refuses to end. He has already seen what his choices can lead to, and the image of Marie being carried away by paramedics after he found her overdosing may stay with him for a long time. Calling Sharon was a major step because it meant Nick finally stopped pretending that he was fine, but admitting that he needs help is only the first battle. If Marie appears at rehab, Sharon could be forced to confront a painful part of Nick's relapse that he may not be ready to discuss. And if Nick truly wants to rebuild his life, he will have to face not only his addiction, but also the shame, secrets, relationships, and consequences that came with the night he finally hit rock bottom.